Good afternoon, morning, whatever, Cert 3. Here we are, another session, and we're just starting the new topic, facilitate community involvement and participation. You'll find it in ITAFE on the last unit on the list where I put my announcements, but I'll just give you a little start. We're going to start with the case study assessment today, and I'll just put this up on ITAFE for your benefit, hopefully. So the first thing we're doing is brainstorming these questions. So what are the parts of life that people might like to be involved with? Or a similar question, what are the things that make life rewarding? So I've got groups brainstorming at the moment. And we'll see what they come up with.
So just while the guys are brainstorming, I just want to introduce what unit is about. So it's got a focus on disability, and whether that's a physical disability, intellectual, sensory, mental health, it doesn't matter. It's about working with people's strengths, and that could mean that there's a communication barrier perhaps, but it's still finding the strength. And the person that you're working with is the centre of the work. And so that's that person-centred approach and strength-based practice.
So back to the brainstorm. The groups are working on what makes a good life. And let's just have a quick look at some of the things that people have come up with. So in the groups, things like family, health, volunteering, sports, leisure, friends. What else have we got there? Work, being politically active, perhaps looking after yourself, self-care, activism, animal rights or women's rights. Here's another group's work, love, affection, going to markets, cooking, relaxation, travel. Yeah. One last group, things like shopping, work, family, sleep, self-care, all things that make a life rewarding. And I guess the main point from that activity was that regardless of your ability or disability or who you are, what makes a life rewarding is basically the same for everyone. I guess there may be individual differences, of course, but in our work, it is about working and tapping in with what people want. And I guess an example might be someone with autism or on that autism spectrum. They might be quite happy or prefer their own company, and that's fine. But there would be things in their life that make them happy and their life more fulfilling as well. So it's working with that. Another little check sheet of what's meaningful. So I think we've covered that in our small group discussion, but I'll just leave that up for a second if people want to peruse that. I can't say anything that stands out as being particularly different than anything that the groups came up with. Now, in the session today, we moved on to a couple of videos in particular. So I'll just point out one that we did watch pretty much all of this video. It was Employable Me, a series from ABC. We watched series 2, episode 2, so you can access that on ABC iView. And the episode that we looked at followed the lives of 3 young people. Firstly, Kaya, who was dealing with Tourette's, and how that had impacted significantly on his life. So in his case, Tourette's manifested as a lot of uncontrollable swearing in a lot of cases, which I guess made his quest to get employment something that was a barrier. As one of his first employment consultants said to him, "I think you better go on the pension. I don't think I can get you a job." And if you've seen the show, then you'll understand that position. But in Kaya's case, he does have some incredible strengths, including Auslan, and that we follow his journey to seeking employment using that strength. And as there are barriers, and as I said, I guess breaching some sort of social acceptable norms in the amount of swearing and the type of swearing. For example, he was in the main street of a suburb of Sydney having a coffee, sort of looking out onto the street, and he would yell out things like "pedophile" to passers-by. An uncontrollable urge to say random sort of stuff, but some of it's certainly offensive and put him in risk. And I would feel in some places, in some instances. We also followed the journey of a young guy called Jake. He was early 20s, 20 or 21, had an intellectual disability and had seizures. And they presented that the seizures was something that had been a barrier in particular to his employment, as well as the mild intellectual learning disability. But he did have some mechanical skills, having helped his father in his mechanical workshop. And there, we followed Jake's journey into securing employment. And I was really interested in focusing on the skills of the support people, the support workers from disability services in that employment space, getting people open employment, people with a disability open employment. And we get a bit of a glimpse of the skills of Jake's support worker there. And that's something I was interested to point out. And to people watching the program, the skills that worker used to engage, communicate as an equal, if you like, as a full person, as a person who wants to contribute, looking at their strengths and skills and supporting Jake, even though there are some challenges in that journey. All right, so we'll just have a quick look at what some of this looks like from Employable Me. Here's a bit of Kaya.
It's not easy. Peanuts. Porn star!
How do you feel about your tics?
I used to be touchy about it a little bit, to be honest, just because so many people think that Tourette's is a joke. Just because they don't know that much about it and they've just seen it on a comedy show or something. There's a funny side to it, but it's not a joke though. It's a real disability that affects me every day in a lot of ways that are not funny. So, shit, fuck. But yeah, people can go, fuck. Sometimes I'll laugh because it catches me by surprise. It just comes out and I hear it because it didn't even feel like it came from me.
And another short video that I had a look at or showed the class was a video clip made by a local youth work practitioner called Shane Kennedy, or Tons. So has a background in hip hop, graffiti art, that side of things. But a couple of years ago, he was employed to work with people with a disability, and some of those people were non-verbal. So got around that by creating a hip hop song, but using computer generated voices, so capturing what they wanted to say. And I guess to me, this little clip that's called "This Is My World" really captures what we're talking about and what's important to people. Whether it's their leisure, their recreation, their employment, how they want to be included in society, basically, and having a say. And one guy talks about even the United Nations and having a voice there. So that idea of civic and political engagement is, really evident in this clip. So as I said, made by Tons and his colleagues. He's got a company called Up and Up. You can find this on his Facebook page. If you go into Up, so that's UP, then an N and Up. I think I had the links previous. Anyway, have a listen to this, and I'm sure it'll capture what I'm talking about here. And enjoy.
You do this one.
Okay, try it.
We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard.
Get out of the way.
This is my world. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard.
Get out of the way.
We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard. Get out of the way. This is my world. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard. Get out of the way. This is my world. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard. Get out of the way. This is my world. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be seen.
Hello everybody, my name is Jaco. I'm a Harry Potter fan, but I ain't no Draco. I'm a pretty chilled out, laid back guy, but if you get in my way, I'm gonna say goodbye.
Hi, my name is Ika. I like to ride horses in the paddock within my glide. Trotting along, I feel free. The wind in my hair, I love being me.
Hey everyone, I'm the king. I live my own life, I do my own thing. I'm the man, so talk to me like one. All I want is my place in the sun. Don't talk to me like I'm a kid. I'm the man in the moment, God forbid.
We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard. Get out of the way. This is my world. We're I love to skydive and being free-o, like a roller coaster. I'm moving real fast. Step out the way, I need to get past. I want to hit New York, United Nations, taking it to the top with my inspiration, my world, my dreams, my aspiration. It's time to change the situation.
Introducing myself, my name is Ezra. I love to sew, doing hot letters. When my friends come over, the ink's no better. My friends feel welcome, I feel better. My dog in the bed, her name is Chloe. They sleep on my bed, I hold her closely. My heart's full of love when my family are around. When I hold mine down.
We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard, get out of the way, this is my love. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard, get out of the way, this is my love. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard, get out of the way, this is my love. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be seen, we're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard, get out of the way, this is my love. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard, get out of the way, this is my love. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be heard, get out of the way, this is my love. We're gonna be seen, we're gonna be seen.
So yeah, that says it all. How do I compete with that? Looking at people's strengths and that person-centered approach. So we moved on from there and as we spoke about in preparation for doing the case study, how is it that we find out what people want to do? So it could be that, yeah, in the first instance, certainly talk to them and using all those good interpersonal skills that we've learnt about and used and developed in class. It could be talking to others in their extended family. It could be some sort of survey or profile. So in the social network, we've got that slide up there. Considering, is it their close family, neighbours, maybe some sort of support staff who could be paid. Who else do they live with? Who do they work with? Groups that they belong with. So all those sort of places where you might get a little bit of info. I guess a little bit about employment. I guess that could be quite central, particularly in our world, around the person's identity and what makes people feel like their life is valuable. Obviously get money, and that was one of the issues that were identified in, what makes a life significant, important, people feeling good, so earning some money. And in that video clip, just then, we heard about someone who, their life was involved, I laugh, I shred. So when they talk about shredding, that's their work, their employment is in what is called today a business service. So in the past, that might have been called something like a sheltered workshop or something like that, where I guess employment specifically for people with a disability. These days, they're called business services. So a company or an organisation called Maywell, based up around Maitland, they're quite big in working in that disability space, and they've got an employment enterprise, if you like, or a business service. Involves publishing, like news pamphlets, advertising, that sort of thing. In part of that, there's also shredding, which I believe would be sort of like a recycling service. People, organisations getting rid of documents, papers, going to somewhere like Maywell and having to be manually shredded. That slide up there, though, what's open employment? Open employment is about working. Anyone, can work in open employment. Like it's a job for everyone. Whether it's at Coles or a teacher, vet nurse, all those sort of things. That's open employment. And I guess in that video we saw earlier, following the journey of Kaya, he ended up, using his skills in Auslan to get open employment. Paid and unpaid or volunteering, all those sort of things can be considered in that employment space, and I suppose around skill development, but certainly making, I guess, life meaningful. Now, here was a little case study that I did mention in class. And if you look at that the diagram or the pointer across the top, it starts on the left there as a presence, to the far right being participation, and in the middle there identified as encounter. So I just explained this in the scenario that they give. Someone called Sarah, a younger person, could be living at home or perhaps in supported accommodation or a group home. But what Sarah likes to do is jigsaw puzzles. So that's something that gives her meaning and enjoyment in life. So I think the way it's framed in the scenario is that the staff might or the parents bring jigsaws home, and Sarah does them at home. So she's there, got a presence. She's doing something she enjoys, but it's certainly very insular. It's just happening in her own space at home. Take it to another level. So if you go the next step to the right as an encounter, so Sarah likes to go to the local op shop, let's call it Vinnie's, and sees what sort of jigsaws they've got coming in, what's in stock, and buying a few and taking them home and doing them. And so that's an encounter, going into the shop and purchasing those jigsaws. Sarah discovers is that sometimes she does the jigsaws and sometimes there's a piece missing or two. That frustrates her and makes her angry. So next time she goes into the Vinnie's, she might be supported to say, yeah, I've been buying these things and not always complete, so that's annoying me. We spoke about that in class and someone, what would be taking that to another level? And someone suggested, maybe asking for a refund and getting money back. And that's certainly an assertive and legitimate response. The conversation could sort of go with support perhaps for Sarah, that she goes into Vinnie's maybe a day or two a week and starts doing some of the puzzles there. And, if they're short, and she can do them in the shop, and if they're all there, then they go up for sale. And if they're bigger ones, maybe she has to take them home and work through them. And if they're complete, again, they go up for sale. So in a sense, she maybe finds her niche in part of that. It's sort of kind of like a valued staff member or a team member at Vinnie's in doing quality control on the jigsaws. Making sure that they're good enough to be sold or they're all complete. So yes, and so that might lead her to be part of, part of the workforce, or that workspace, having morning tea discussions, having a place set up that's for her. Maybe she starts to do other duties and jobs, and that's volunteering at this point. But does that have the potential to turn into, more skills, open up the opportunity for some other paid work down the track? You never know. But that's that idea of moving from just being a presence and doing something to taking it into, full participation or higher participation in community life. And I guess that's a little comparison. What I mentioned earlier, that idea of, in the past, there was things like sheltered workshops. And often it was about people with a disability who were saying, well, we'll put you in that sheltered workshop. So in the diagram or the slide we've got in front there, in the past, the activities on the left, it was about, we're going to fit people into what's available. But now we move to the right, it's about person-centred and people having a choice and having input and a say into what. And if it is about, building capacity and lifelong learning as well, that there's choice and control rather than we're going to put you, we know there's a place that weaves baskets or whatever in the past, we're going to put you there, no say, in that. So we've moved from that approach. So the videos, we looked at the support worker skills, say with Kaya, Jake and Sarah. I haven't mentioned Sarah, but Sarah had dwarfism and, was looking at getting into that vet assistant in vet care sort of things. What sort of skills would a good support worker need? So I didn't have a handout on this, but certainly that strengths-based, being able to provide the right amount of support, and whether that's in education, employment, recreation or lifestyle, knows when to step forward and then when to step back. Being flexible and creative perhaps, resourceful, thinking outside your own world, looking for ways to improve outcomes, time management, and good researcher, and good with people, I guess, customers, relations. And we saw that in the video. Jake, he was supported to do some cold canvassing, approaching a whole range of different services with his resume. So the job support person was doing that and, being very approachable, but also respectful of culture and diversity, being a team player, working, with families and other organisations. Also having, good values and the idea of, working with inclusion, good networks, presenting disability positively in the community, but taking responsibility for their own work practices. I think they're just a good range of skills, and I've certainly seen that in everyone. And just in summary, I don't necessarily want to read it all out. You guys can read it out. But Milo's 25. He's moved to the Central Coast. He's got an interest in pursuing Hare Krishna. It's a branch of Hinduism. He uses a wheelchair. So he's 25, uses a wheelchair after a surfing accident 5 years ago. He's had a lot of barriers, social and physical, in his experience of the world. since his accident. But he's interested in getting back into the ocean. He's mentioned the Disabled Surfers Association of Australia, which we'll have a look at. And he's also into yoga, would like to practice and one day be an instructor in yoga. So you're in the position of the support worker and you're having this initial chat with Milo. He did a uni in his younger years for a couple of years in fine art, and he's looking at getting back into that. And basically he's come into the local council to get info on different services in the local community. He's new to the area, wants to find out what's out there in terms of access for people with a disability into the areas that I've just mentioned, as well as driving. So he'd like to get his licence, and that will involve some specialist driving equipment and skills of the driving instructors. Certainly they were welcoming, the council staff are welcoming. There's things like a disability inclusion action plan on display, and we have to do something with that in the written part of this assignment. And he's Milo's referred on to Indigo, where you are the worker, and this is a case study, so we're not doing a role play, and you're going to work through some questions as follows. So basically the first question, and I'll just talk through these, but it's saying that you're the intake worker at Indigo and you're talking to Milo, and how you will assist him is what it's saying, in identifying his interests and discover his abilities and preferences. So I guess it's what sort of communication skills. So think of the active listening, the attending behaviours, the open posture, the being person-centred. So we're really using good open questions to hear Milo's story. So it's between 15 and 30 words. So you should get that out of the sort of things I've just done. Question 2 goes on, and it's sort of along the lines of the sort of things that's been identified in your discussion with Milo are listed down the bottom there, A, B, C, D and E. So he's interested in surf schools or surfing programs, yoga instructor training, so not just being a yoga participant, but looking at yoga instructor training. So that would have to, in my opinion, looking at something that's a little bit more disability friendly or inclusive in their approaches to training. Hare Krishna worship, transport services, and then the last one is the driving school and driving lessons. So if you go over the page, there's a table. So they've got the, surf schools, surfing programs, yoga, etc. I just went through all that, but then you fill in the table with the information on the particular things that you found out. So these are those skills of the worker of being a good researcher, and then a contact or how to access those particular services is what you're going to find out. So we did spend a little bit of time looking at the Disabled Surfers Association of Australia, something that I was involved in 20 or 30 years ago, and it progressed. So there's local branches in Lake Macquarie and Central Coast. It does say Milo lives on the Central Coast, but I'm happy if you find either Newcastle or Central Coast services, depending, if you've got a preference. So let's just have a look at I've got another little video on the Disabled Surfers Association.
Awesome day down here at Disabled Surfing, down at Toowoomba Bay on the Central Coast. We had a stack of volunteers come and help these amazing, courageous participants who some of them have been in the ocean for their first time, obviously with a whole lot of different things going on in their life, but to be able to have this many people from the community come together and take these amazing people into the water is one of the most fulfilling, incredible experiences. It's very, very touching.
So this is like a little promotion from the Central Coast branch of Disabled Surfers Association of Australia. It's, I guess, as I said, promotional. It might have a more of a child focus, but certainly it's an inclusive organisation and caters for all ages, all abilities. I guess all it requires is someone to have a desire and a passion to get into the surf. Let's have a look at this. So there, wonderful little promo for the Disabled Surfers Association of Australia down on the Central Coast branch. There's a Hunter branch, as I said, and the Hunter branch, if you can, Google, you'll end up being able to find the Hunter branch. Hunter branch is Facebook page, and they do their come and try day or experience days down at Caves Beach, and they've got a contact. So the table, we've brainstormed it, and here's what we came up with on the board. My little shorthand hieroglyphics might be a little bit hard to follow, but we've sort of given you a head start, I guess. We've got the contact name for Hunter down there up on the board, Brett Telfer. We've got a number there, and we've got a Central Coast contact as Ray Fletcher for the Disabled Surfers Association. In terms of Milo, it could be that, two-way conversation about, if he wants to go and experience. I believe that's actually a come and try day or an experience day at Caves Beach on this Saturday or Sunday coming. So if you're a worker, that was very timely info, and you can say to Milo, yeah, look, they got a day coming, and let's make contact with Brett and give him a call, see what it's all about, see if you like the sound of it. Let's see if we can get you down to Caves Beach on Saturday or Sunday and see what you reckon. And maybe, from that discussion, it's sort of Milo's sort of saying, yeah, that's good, but I probably need to get my, 5 years since I've been in the water, had an accident, it's going to be different. I might need a little bit of work in the pool, in the still water, just to get my feelings for the water and, my skill levels up to, an area that I feel comfortable. And that's certainly a possibility in the way the conversation go. Hydrotherapy we've mentioned previously, maybe, something along those lines. So, yeah, it's keeping those radars up and looking at what might work best. Then we've got the yoga stuff. So there was some info there around a 3-day level 1 course specific for people with a disability. And then we've got a contact there. I think it's supposed to be Kirsty Christensen, so better check that out. And that looks like that's down in Ryde. And there was some talk in the class that could be a Ryde hospital of some description, a rehab place. So there was someone with some good knowledge around that as being a really good place. And, I suppose in our role as support, if we can make the contact, have a chat with Kirsty, you get the conversation started, and that, where that leads into what sort of, it could open up other opportunities or doors. Okay. Hare Krishna worship. So I don't know if your people are local, you might have come across some Hare Krishna activity in our area. So I know they now have a restaurant in the Mayfield area. They used to, in years gone by, have a really nice vegetarian restaurant more in the centre of Newcastle, near where the Larique Theatre used to be, in that area. And, that's under a whole heap of big redevelopment. Last time I was in there. So that's obviously new, but what I am aware of, they've got like a farm and a community just out of Cessnock area at a place called Millfield. So if you wanted to find out about Hare Krishna practice, that's where I'd be contacting. So we've got some numbers there for the new Gokula community at Cessnock. And we also found out that they actually also have yoga days at the Hare Krishna set up there. So I've got some numbers there for NEETI, so NETI. Got a number there, and that's specifically around yoga. Or we've got another number for the actual Hare Krishna side of things and that practice. And we had a little bit of discussion around, there might have been mixed feedback from people, in their world about how the benefits. Some people might have had some negative experiences with Hare Krishna, but it's about Milo's choice, and we're supporting him and giving him all the info, and he makes his own choice around that. And that's something he's had some experience in and he might want to do. And, people's choice. Maybe as our role as support worker, if, he starts practicing and we sense that maybe he's not so happy, we can explore that and see if everything's going okay. So being a sounding board or a monitor in case there's some things that he does bring up some concerns for him. And that could be a good role for us. So, yes, the way of approaching that is Hare Krishna, go to that kind of the head office, if you like, with a farm out at Millfield in the Cessnock area, and get all the info about what's possible for Milo in terms of accessing worship. Transport services. So we had some really good insights from the class around this. So NDIS transport provider to discuss needs and costs, and there's a 1300 764 433 number there. The Opal app was mentioned, as all government taxis, trains, buses, ferries. You can access the timetable and the cost, and it will also talk about accessibility. And private taxi could be an option, or iCare vouchers, to access taxis. So iCare being the government insurance arm, I suppose, or supporting people through rehab and injuries at work. Driving schools and driving lessons, so it could be NDIS funded, and apparently there's L Trent Driving School, and there's a number there. L Trent specialises in teaching people and have the adaptive vehicles that have had the adaptations made, and same for Drive Safe Academy, and they're both in the local area as well as Sydney. So in the longer term, those discussions around cost of perhaps the adaptation of Milo if he gets a vehicle, it obviously would probably need to be hand operated, so accelerator, brake, etc., rather than foot pedal operated. The cost and how that might be done could be something that you support Milo through that process with. Okay, so you fill in the table based on that sort of stuff. The next question is about there's a few disability support workers at Indigo. Some of them are keen surfers, and a couple who do yoga. You make a note to suggest that to the coordinator that they might be good to support Milo, good matches there. So what are the benefits of having people with similar interests to Milo? So fairly simple and straightforward, but that idea of rapport, RAPPORT, making a rapport and a connection, something to talk about, similar interests, maybe shared stories, shared short experiences in the past. That all helps about building that rapport and connection. Role, so this is question 4. Part of your role is to monitor the level of engagement in consultation with the supervisor. So how's Milo doing? Describe 2 methods that you could use to seek feedback from Milo and his relevant others to ensure the support he's receiving continues to meet his current and changing needs. So we spoke about Milo and his relevant others earlier on in one of the earlier slides. So, who's in his sphere? So whether it's people close to him, his family, maybe it's support workers, maybe it's the people, involved in the activities that he's doing. Obviously, the first one would be talking to Milo. He's the expert. And then from those other groups that we, getting feedback from some of those other groups. And that could be things like discussions verbally or informally. Perhaps it's an email from someone, whether it's a yoga practitioner or the Disability Surfers Association. Just give them a bit of feedback. Maybe there's a Zoom or a Skype hookup, something like that, to do a bit of a catch-up or a bit of a, what we call like a case catch-up, case review sort of thing. Perhaps obviously Milo is the centre of all that. Provide 2 examples for each of the following barriers to community participation and social inclusion where Milo could encounter. So there's physical barriers, identify, given examples and the solutions, skills barriers, examples and solutions, and other barriers. So physical barriers, Milo using a wheelchair could be access to certain places. Let's say beach, I think we spoke about that, and there's certainly adaptive wheelchairs that can go over the beach, and maybe it's about negotiating how to access those, where to access those. Some of the surf clubs have them, and I'm imagining that the surf club down there at Caves, if they've got the disabled surfers, or down on the Central Coast at Toowoon Bay, those would be accessible. The physical barriers, I'm not sure about the Hare Krishna place out at Wollombi, out at Millfield, out near Cessnock. How accessible is that for a wheelchair? What's the solution? I guess having discussions, and then are there any ramps or anything like that that can be looked at, or is it some sort of four-wheel drive wheels again for Milo's wheelchair? There's sort of things I was thinking about. Getting to access to practice yoga. That could be the sort of physical access. Skills, I guess there's a few changes in Milo's life since he last went surfing. So we spoke about the skills required to get into the surf, even with support. Maybe it's about getting some still water time under his belt and get his strength and skills up there. Skills barrier, similarly for driving, I suppose. Is it about, you've got to get to understand different ways of driving in terms of the adaptive technology, and I guess meeting and having those lessons with the driving school. Other barriers could be things like prejudice or stereotypical views, maybe someone talking to Milo like he's a child, perhaps because he's using a wheelchair, maybe addressing the support worker rather than Milo. So if you're in that role as a support worker, politely but assertively suggesting that, yeah, it's okay to talk to Milo. He's not, he might be in a wheelchair, but he's certainly more than capable of having his own conversations. So that could be some sort of prejudice there or stereotype. What other barriers? Finance, I think we've mentioned about as well. How do we overcome some of those costs? So some of that adaptive technology, driving lessons, yeah. And again, it says who do we explore, and I'll let you have a think about that. Who to talk to. Examples, provide 2 examples that would indicate that the implemented strategies were successful. So let's say we implemented a strategy for Milo to go and have a look at Disabled Surface Association. How do we know if that becomes quite successful? Maybe there's things like, yeah, he starts to do some still water swimming, get his strengths up, and he starts participating and communicating regularly via Facebook or on the phone to the disabled surface people. That would be good. And similarly, how do you know if the yoga stuff takes off? Maybe he becomes a regular attendee at a suitable yoga place with a view of getting his strength and skills and up there to the point where he can look at engaging in the instructor training. So the plans are moving forward. Number 7, who should be included in the review process when reviewing the success of the implemented strategy? So again, that idea of who's in Milo's world. Who are those networks? Who are the close friends, relations? Whether it's family, partner, significant others, support workers, maybe people who are actively involved in what activities he's doing. Whether it's the driving instructor, the Disabled Surface Association, the yoga people, yoga instructors, yoga practitioners. Yeah, all those sort of people. So they'd all be included. Now, the next one, 8, you must be able to recognise your own limitations as a support worker. Explain where recognising when you may have met your limitation in addressing Milo's issues is essential for good practice. So essentially for me, it's about providing the best possible options for Milo. And, I know a little bit about some things I know nothing about necessarily. So I know I'm not the expert. So I guess my role is reaching out and helping Milo make the connections and find out. And I'm the conduit to get there. And that's important too for safety, keeping Milo safe. I'm not going to modify his wheelchair or, to put 4-wheel drive BMX tyres on or anything like that. I'm not an expert in that. What if his wheel comes off and he hurts himself? So yeah, I could be breaching my duty of care by doing stuff that is outside my skill base. You must be able to recognise your own limitations as a support worker. Who should you seek advice from? So certainly from a supervisor in the first instance could be useful, someone with more experience, and this is only you need 1 to 10 words, so that's not too many, but also the other experts in whatever Milo says he's interested in. Reach out to those experts. The Disabled Surface Association, contact, they're an expert. The Hare Krishna office, if you like, for want of a better word, they'd be experts. Okay, and when accessing Indigo Community Services and Health Hub, name 2 rights and 2 responsibilities Milo has as a participant of the service. So I guess we've all got rights and responsibilities, whether we're worker or participants in a service. So we've all got the right, I guess, to confidentiality, and we've got the right to have a look at anything written about us and case notes, give permission for that to be shared, so they're all rights. Responsibility, yeah, we don't go telling stuff out of school either, even as a participant. Milo's a participant, he doesn't, just respect others' personal space and privacy as well. I guess that would include social media. Right to be safe at the service and have access. Particularly as a wheelchair user, so certainly right to have safe access and get into that office or space or wherever he's going there at Indigo. And the responsibility, is just be responsible, I suppose, with the use of his wheelchair. Don't just run over people. Just be a bit mindful and cautious as well. So it goes both ways. Okay, so it's quite simple. Let's have a look at. Talks about a disability inclusion action plan used by local councils, and I think most councils will have something named that or very similar, and it talks about having attached a copy. I can put up the Lake Macquarie one as a scanned document up here on iTafe with this post, so you can have a look at that. That's the one we did use in class, but you're certainly more than free to have a look at any of the other council documents in the disability inclusion action plan space. Certainly Newcastle will have one. Central Coast, I believe, has one. Port Stephens will have something similar. you'll find something. So you might be more interested in looking at your local area. I happen to go with Lake Macquarie. I had a bit of a connection there and having worked there some time ago. But we used to have disability inclusion days. I worked closely with that, and that included doing things, and this is going back 20 years, but doing things like the bosses at council being given a wheelchair and asked to navigate around Charlestown, for example. And I believe that some of the bosses may have come unstuck, and some of those little lippy things that are on some of those dips in the you're going down a curb, but there's still a couple of, might be an inch or so, and the wheels can get stuck in that, and out you go. And people in the class spoke about the same sort of thing. But what are these plans about? So it is about a voice for people with a disability, saying this is what's good and what needs to be improved in a community. This is what we'd like to have. And think about all those areas of inclusion. So whether that's recreation, sport, education, further learning, friendships, employment, money, worship and spirituality, self-care, mental health, all those sort of things could be included and considered in a plan, and what people are saying. And the plan will say how well the council is doing, what have they achieved, but this is a plan for what they'd like to have done. They might say we've got a good paths in all our parks, and they're wheelchair accessible, good signage. People spoke about those dimples on the ground for people that are vision impaired. They'll say we've got all this and X, Y, and Z, but this is what we'd like to achieve. We'd like to have more access at our beaches, so we're looking at some sort of pathway or meshing at Redhead and Case Beach or something. I'm making that up, but that's what the plan might say. The plan will also mention about how they're in line with some of the major laws that support the inclusion of people with disability. So Disability Discrimination Acts, for example, they'll say this is what we're doing to keep in line with that. So, in your own words, last question. Research the term active citizenship. Describe in your own words what being an active citizen could mean for Milo, 100 to 150 words. Also reference your findings. So there's a good reference I might point out from the Victorian government in terms of their disability inclusion and active citizenship approaches, what they're doing. And again, it's similar to what we just spoke about being an active citizen. It's all those things we've just spoken about in terms of doing what you want to do. This is where we started the day with those slides, or that brainstorming, to be an active citizen, or, what makes a fulfilling life is having the ability to have friends, families, go out for coffee if I want. If I want to get employment, I can seek that employment. My house is accessible. If I want to practice a religion, I can find that, I can access that. If I have particular interest groups or I want to be active around politics. So in terms of all those areas being active citizenship, particularly that political space. And I guess for people with a disability, having some political input is really important. I can see that there's no access to the local community hall at X, Y, and Z. Let's Warners Bay, and I don't know, that's definitely not the case. I'm sure the Lake Macquarie Council, given that that's a regional sort of performing arts space, that will have really good access. But certainly in the planning, and that's another thing, politically, if there are things that need considered in planning, being an active citizen could involve, having that chance to have input and people asking for your voice, and you can put that forward. So, in your own words, have a go at being what an active citizen is. But start at that big picture that, it's about being included in all sorts of areas, but also having the ability to be politically influencing, if you like, have a say, have an influence. And I guess this day and age too, social media has a big role in being a social influencer. Okay, hope that's useful, and toodle pips.